Welcome back to Tales of Two Bros. I am Angel,
I'm Adon.
and we have two special guests today in honor of Mother's Day. We have our mother, Frances, and then we have also, as you know, Kimberly making her return.
Hi.
And this will be our marvelous review of Moon Knight. Spoilers, even though we're late on the review of this, in the sense of the show and on Mother's Day, Mom came down to visit and we spent the weekend having fun, but also we spent the weekend watching Moon Knight. So I thought, in honor of Mother's Day, in honor of these two lovely mothers, I sounded wrong, that, hey,
Lovely mothers.
no, I know, I'm not
Bite
saying,
your
I'm
tongue.
not saying you weren't, but I thought we could give the floor, or if you will, the mic to these ladies and see how they thought about the show. And Mom is a big fan of Egyptian lore or mythology. I don't know what the right word is.
Egyptian spirituality and mysteries.
Let's do a little backstory of Moon Knight. And then, do you want to go first on that?
Essentially, Moon Knight's a 6-episode series. Long story short, it's basically a man who is having a sleeping disorder. And then he realizes that he's blacking out, waking up in different areas.
This is not what I'm talking about.
Oh,
I'm talking,
my bad.
not the series. I'm talking about in the sense of what Moon Knight is about in general.
Basically, he's a superhero who has multiple personalities. He made a deal with a Egyptian god, and his sole goal is to protect the people traveling at night. It can also include supernatural creatures. Joins the Avengers. He's more known to deal with the supernatural heroes like Blade, and everybody jokes that they call him Marvel Batman.
So yes, Moon Knight was created way, I would say, in the 70s probably. He premiered in the comic of Werewolf by Night. On the show, there were some QR codes. And if you scan the QR codes, you'll get a free comic per episode.
True.
When you read those comics, you get a little backstory or better understanding of the original Moon Knight. Is quite different than the show, and it's quite different how it evolved or how it was originated. And then he evolved through the comics. Also, Wolf by Night, he was transformed by the Darkhold. Only connection I can see to the MCU, not Moon Knight, that is, but Wolf by Night, with the Darkhold with Doctor Strange and Wanda, or the Scarlet Witch that just came out. Okay, that's the only connection. But then at the last comic they show is his connection to Kang. But we don't see that in the show. Well, we see that in the show through Kang's followers, that he went by a different name as an Egyptian lord or Egyptian king. Oddly enough, or funny enough, that Moon Knight was Mark Spector, who was hired by these goons, if you will, or corporate heads, and they gave him the costume. Called him Moon Knight. He hated it, but he said, hey, a buck is a buck. You know, he wore the costume. Later on, there's more incarnations of Mark Spector that we find out that he suffers from multiple personality disorder, now a servant, an avatar of Khonshu, the moon god, and he seeks revenge for those who have done wrong after they committed the crime. And then
this is a form of justice. He waits until the crime has been committed.
No, because Angel just said that Mark's and Steve's, they're the avatar of the moon goddess who wants justice. The moon god who wants justice.
Yeah.
But the other dude with the scales was also saying that he wanted some justice.
I've been a follower of Moon Knight for a long time. Granted, reading it, I was always confused because he would jump personalities, but they all served the same purpose. And you're right, he was regarded as the Marvel's Batman because one of his personalities, Stephen Grant, was a multi-billionaire, which was able to afford his gadgets. He had a moon copper.
He still does.
Well, I'm just saying,
a moon glider, a moon jet.
And then he had like a James Lockley, who was more of the ears on the street.
Jake Lockley.
And then Jake Lockley. Who did I say?
James.
Oh, anyway. And then you have the main guy, the main host, Mark Spector. And so the three personalities work together to serve Khonshu.
Wait, but
There's three. There's three.
Okay.
Yeah.
But in the comics,
there ended up being more in the comics.
Okay.
One more, actually, Mr. Knight.
Actually,
That was a
they added more.
Who else?
The asylum bit. That's from the comics, right?
Right.
In the comics, they show the three main. Mr. Knight is a personality itself. And then they identify Moon Knight itself as its own personality. And then there's a sixth one, which no one ever saw until this moment, Space Knight, who fights werewolves in a never-ending battle war on the moon. And it's in his head. But the personality lives there.
Okay.
Interesting.
Yeah, all right.
It's crazy.
I loved the comic book. Like I said, I was a big fan of like level B, level C characters like Moon Knight, Iron Fist, Shang-Chi, as well as the A-list Captain America, Spider-Man. So watching this was taken aback, but I also loved it. I thought what they did here in this interpretation of the Moon Knight of Mark Spector was clever, was smart, entertaining, and I will say original.
I have a question that pertaining to something that you said, Adán, that Steve and Max had made a deal.
Who's Max?
You mean Mark?
Mark had made a deal. How did he get elected to make a deal?
Did you not watch the episode?
Yeah, but you said that Steve, Mac, it must have been Mark, that he made the deal. How did that guy choose Mark? I don't remember this piece.
I don't remember saying that.
And it must have been
Not
Angel.
really.
Steve and Mark
I know
are
it
the
wasn't
same
me.
person.
I wasn't Kim.
Steve and Mark are the same person. He suffers from DID.
I know.
Okay. Who they made a deal with was Khonshu.
I know they made the deal with Khonshu, but I don't remember how that came about and why. Why pick him?
Oh, that was in the episode 5 when he was recapping his life history.
When he was dying.
Oh.
So that's still true in the comic. In the comic, he actually died in the comic, and Khonshu gave him a choice: like, you can just remain dead, or you can choose life and work for me.
But does anybody know why Khonshu? Because there's a lot of other people dying. Decided, let me target.
That's at the end of the last episode. He picked Mark Spector not because of Mark, not because of Steven. It was more of Jake Lockley, the one who has no problem
doing his bidding.
Doing his bidding.
Exactly. It's actually slightly different in the comics. It's also because of his DID, but because Khonshu believed that he was so broken, if he could push him a little bit further, it'll basically break Mark. And then he's an empty vessel.
Total control.
And then he'd be personified on Earth. So similar, but slightly different.
Season 2 has been announced, so maybe we'll get something like that. Kim, what was your initial thoughts?
I liked it. The only problem that I had with it is because obviously I'm the viewer who doesn't know the backstory, who hadn't read any of the comics, so I was coming into it clueless. I was very somewhat confused in certain areas because of that. So I think that was part of my reason for not liking it, probably.
And Mom, what about you? Your initial take on it?
Well, in all honesty, I was caught up with the gods and the graphics. You know, looking to see how authentic they were depicting. You know, things that have to do with Egypt. The last episode, you know what I told you about Layla. I just was disappointed. What she came across like Wonder Woman. I didn't want her to be like Wonder Woman
with the wings and everything. I thought,
and you know, she did she did that and that. That's not yours. That's Wonder Woman's.
But she didn't have bracelets. She had wings. That deflected.
Yeah, but it was just too reminiscent of Wonder Woman.
Yeah,
and they're all going to be similar to one another because you have Superman that. There's other superheroes that fly and who are super strong, like the Man Martian, who are in the same world. And they pretty much have the same strength and same abilities. And then you have other detectives out there. It's not just Batman. So to say that it's too similar to one, because the thing is, DC and Marvel, they influenced each other. They try to up each other. And granted, in the comics, it wasn't a female. It was a male originally.
Correct. And technically, Layla didn't exist. It was another girl's name.
Right, Marlene.
And she was an Egyptian.
White. Blonde hair, blue eyes.
But obviously, other people agree with our thoughts because there are memes out there.
I'm not saying that you're wrong or right.
That show the similarities. So
no, we don't disagree.
That's going to happen.
But honestly, like Angel says, there's only so much originality out there for comic book superheroes. Marvel has about 10 different versions of Superman.
For me, when I saw her, I thought of the Falcon. I couldn't help
I
it
didn't. I didn't.
Yeah.
because she had the wings. She was flying. She actually was flying better than he was.
The only thing that also the other thing was the fact that she didn't have anything on her head. It was just her hair. It was just
they didn't do nothing right about her hair either.
And it was like, okay, if you go that detail with wings and a costume and everything, and you just forget about the head, like, okay,
I mean,
like,
would
Yeah,
have
she
been,
needed like she needed like a bandana or a helmet
Her
or
God,
something.
yeah,
would have been better as a
a
hippo.
mask, because she was a fighter. You know, she was talented. She was.
her God was a hippo. You think her goddess was a hippo?
oh,
So you think that the goddess
true.
was worried about that? Was
oh yeah,
decked out,
because the hippo was all like, "Girl, you got the style. You can styling with my costume and everything
Yeah.
else." Okay, she's styling the costume, but she forgot about her hair.
And
her
she
head.
was sometimes fighting better than Steve.
Well, yeah, that's true. That's without
right.
question.
But the thing is, so did Moon Knight. Moon Knight had powers too. But the thing is, Steven was not a fighter. Mark was.
But he did fight.
No, I know that. Oh, that don't get me started on that too. But right, he did fight, but for a long time he wouldn't. He didn't know how to. He didn't accept that part of him.
Yeah, he was wussy.
And rightly so, and that's what I liked about this series.
Because he was more of a nerd.
Well,
he was more into
exactly.
the history, to the.
He was a smart guy.
Yes, here you go. You just said it, Alan. So Steve represented the brains.
Mm-hmm.
Mark represented the brawn.
Mm-hmm.
Jake, he did what both couldn't do or wouldn't do.
I got a question.
They didn't really show much
answer.
of Jake. It was more like
Right, but what you saw, like, remember when they flashed out and they like none of them accepted the
Did you do that? No, I didn't do that. Did
so
you
they're
do that?
dead.
you used to say this to me all the time. There's like 3 parts of your personality. It's like what are those 3 parts?
Conscious, subconsciousness, and super consciousness.
And how they interact.
They work with either your higher consciousness. I don't want to talk that.
Well, I mean, does that not apply here?
Helps.
Yeah, it applies.
Kind of help.
It applies because Steve was
No,
the
but she
lower.
probably go to a rant.
Steve was the. No, I won't go there. Steve was the lower personality. Max was the higher personality.
And then
that
it
was
was
2
Jake.
different consciousness.
Who is Max?
Mark?
Ladies and gentlemen who are listening, when she says Max by accident, it's Mark.
She means Mark.
So
If it starts with an M.
But we're gonna deviate a little bit. You know that Steve was always shackling his ankle, the right one. He's on sand. Do you know why?
Because Steve originally thought he had a sleeping disorder, where he thought he was sleepwalking.
And what was taking place with him, although he was shackled, and he's thinking the sand is going to ground him? What do you think he was actually doing?
The sand
wasn't
wasn't going to ground him,
the sand-
so he
the-
knows
the
that he was leaving.
the sand was there to mark his movements if he
Like
did move.
footprints.
Right. But it was actually for grounding, and he was actually astral projecting, is what he was actually doing. You got to see it again.
What? No, you can't. You just can't say you got to see it again. How?
That inner spirit was astral projecting. He thought he was going physically, but he wasn't.
So how did he get the scarab?
Because he was astral projecting, son. You do that
So
through astral projection.
When you astral project, you're able to get shot and shoot people.
Look at him. He's getting upset.
It's a great conspiracy theory, but that's something Doctor Strange does. He learned that through the mystic arts.
Mm.
So what you're
That's for
saying,
another review.
Oh, yeah.
right? You're saying that he suffers from. No, he doesn't suffer. He does astral planing. He's locking himself in. So why would he bite his ankle?
Okay, so
He's astral plane.
We're talking about alter ego. He's
No,
not
no, no,
aware.
no,
He wasn't aware, and he was also resistant. Remember, he was resistant.
Resistant how? What?
He was resisting
Resistant of
all of
what?
it. He was fighting Mark. He was resistant all the time.
He didn't know Mark was existing until
at first.
moments later. He didn't know that. He knows that he has trouble and that he finds himself at different places, so he tries to keep himself up. That's why there's doors locked. That's why there's tape on it.
That's why they went
there's
through that
sand.
through the whole story of his mom and the whole background of finding out.
He was living a life, but he sometimes found himself like sleepwalking.
Now that does happen. I did look into a little bit in DID. They don't necessarily know that there is other personalities. So that whole instance
Right.
in the first episode
Right.
where he's blacking out, he's waking up, he's like, I'm having gaps in time. legitimately happens to people, and sometimes what they have to do is force the personalities to meet each other in order to coincide.
Like Sybil. Sybil is a very popular multi-personality.
Split as well. That movie Split.
Yeah.
Where I'm failing is that I'm not able to wrap my awareness of the series the way the three of you are wrapping it based on the.
You're looking at a different point of view and a different perspective, which is understandable. But
I'm not able to lock
I
it
think
myself.
I think you're fishing too hard.
Or you could be looking in more at the spiritual side of it.
I like that idea when he got shot. Like when he got shot, you could say he technically astral projected into the afterlife.
That's more like purgatory.
No, that's not astral projection, honey. That's out of body experience.
I was close.
Isn't that the same?
No,
outer body and astral plane.
But the thing about it is that also
astral projection is one thing where you're actually traveling all the different zones. Out of body experiences where I don't want to go there because then there's an NDE. Never mind.
No, but
that's the thing is like
I'll take it all back.
Going back to what Adon was explaining was the fact that when he got shot, that was a time where he actually became
spiritual,
where he became aware and
Awakened.
going through the idea of how he became Mark or how he became Stephen. Because then we get that backstory of how that happened, and then it's a matter of them Mark and Stephen realizing and accepting that fact, because they had to balance the scales. Remember, because the scales were unevening out, and through that whole self-awareness, through that whole finding out how Stephen happened, that's when the scales became balanced, and that's when their heart became as one.
But how does it become one again?
With the scales became balanced,
right? Because they had to do. Remember they had to weigh the feather.
No, I understand that.
When they accept the trauma of the fact of it was their mother and the death of their brother.
Right. So Mark was a fragmented soul, and Steve was the splinter part of the fragmented soul.
Essentially,
he created Stephen because he needed to escape the realization of what was happening between him and his mother.
Right. It was a pain cushioning. Yes.
And coping and dealing with the wrath of his mom is how he created Stephen.
No, wrath of his mom is how he created Stephen and Jake.
They never really clarified what created Jake.
Well, yeah.
Yes, we do. But it was right after Stephen, it was Jake. Jake is because he took the punishment. When his mother went to be physically abusive, that's when Jake took in. Not
I'm going to have to side with Kim on this one, because it was on that 5th episode, he addressed himself as Stephen Grant.
I understand that. But then we left the room when she beats him. That's when Jake comes in.
But it didn't show.
How's that confirmed?
Is that you assuming that, or you learned that?
I know that because.
How do you know that? From the comics or from the show?
From the show. He blanks out when he's in desperate pain.
Yeah.
Steve nor Mark knows what happens. We see it 2 to 3 times.
Well, Mark acts like he knows. He says, he's like, that's not for you to see. It's like, that's
right. Mark was always trying to protect Steve.
Right, exactly. So they both leave the room. So who's there to bear witness? Jake.
He might have a point, but I don't know if I can accept it.
To leave the room. So they don't know. They just know something bad. Mark knows something bad happened, but there's only one to take the pain, to take the punishment. Because Steve came out to be nice. Remember when Steve finally appeared, he was cleaning up. He was tidying up the house, tidying up his room, to make mom happy. And then comes in, and then she's about to beat him. And that's when they both leave.
But that's when it pans to where they end up in the street.
Right, but
in front of the house.
Right. To experience that or to get that story is Jake. And like I said before, when Haro has the staff in his chest and he sees that Layla is getting beaten or shot, he blanks out again and then wakes up again and everyone's beaten up, dead, what have you. And then the same time when he's fighting those 3 Egyptians and he blanks out and he wakes up with stabbing someone. It wasn't Steve. It wasn't Mark.
Yeah, I remember those, but I don't remember the mom.
So let's do this. Those of you in the audience, if you're watching this, do you agree with my brother's theory, or do you think it was Stephen in the bedroom with the mother? Was it Stephen or was it Jake?
Right, because it was always Stephen that would be around with all the people that are dead on the ground. He said, "Who did that?" Steven used to ask that. It wasn't Mark that would say Mark needed to put on his outfit.
No. Actually, since Adon put it in that perspective, then with that said, I would have to agree with Angel because Steven doesn't remember being beaten. Remember in the street, he pretends like he's talking to his mom. He's being nice to her and everything else and stuff. So if somebody's beating you, you're not going to be nice to them. Not
sure you will. If you're a kid, you do.
Them.
If you're a kid, you do.
Steven doesn't remember being beat.
That's what Angel's making the argument is like Angel saying Steven should remember being abused if he was the punching bag.
Yeah, if he was witnessing, if he was being abused by his mom, he would remember it. Hence, Angel's theory is that when she starts beating him, that's when Steven becomes Jake.
Like a chain reaction. Mark goes to Steven to escape, but Steven goes to Jake to escape.
Bear witness, this is the first time out of how many reviews I actually agree with Angel.
It's landmark.
I know.
To go back to the storyline, it's like that. So we have Steve Grant, or Stephen Grant, because he liked to be called Stephen with a V. And originally he was a billionaire playboy. Here he's just your everyday guy who works at a museum, at a gift shop, that knows a lot. He's very intelligent.
Yeah.
You have Mark Spector, who's a mercenary, who, on his deathbed, if you will, devoted himself to Khonshu. And you have Jake Lockley, who we don't really see here until the end, where he's Spanish somehow. Maybe he just takes that name, or he does an accent to disguise himself. But he's from
Venezuela.
No, that's the actor, not the character.
He's Venezuelan Jewish.
Killer. Yeah. But
there are some out there like that.
No, I'm not. We're talking about the character, not the actor. The character is Jewish.
No, but here's my thing. He does look. He has a Latin descent. So I mean, if they're trying just rewrite history,
Angel's tired.
I'm just like pushing it because I see your reaction.
Guys, you're overthinking it. The character is Jewish. Yes, there are other Jewish. And Oscar Isaacs does look Jewish. I know there are Latin Jewish people out there, just like there's Black Jewish people out there. I understand that. That's not the point of this idea right now, that he's Jewish. And he's like the first Jewish superhero that Marvel created.
Mark.
Yes.
Mark. And Steve, is Steve also a superhero with another accent since he does all the fighting?
No.
Yeah.
Steve. Okay.
What's his accent?
Because Steven has an English accent,
No,
right?
in the original, Steve doesn't have an English accent in the original comic book. They recreated him for this series, which I love, because you have mainly two distinct personalities. It's kind of hard to have multiple personalities that sound the same. Kind of makes no sense. Like for me, my favorite episode is episode 5, where we're seeing his backstory. Very little action, one fight, 30 seconds maybe in episode 5. And I think that's one of the best episodes. There are some other good episodes. I did like the first episode. Seeing his story, seeing how they recreated this character for the MCU is short of genius. Do you have a favorite episode or favorite moment?
Come back to me. I have to think about it.
Mom, do you have a favorite moment or favorite episode?
I loved it. When he proved me right, I kept saying, he can fly. And then he's flying.
But he doesn't fly. He doesn't.
Yes, he does.
Fly. He was assisted by Khonshu. He doesn't fly on his own.
It's like a hang glider. Khonshu just made air.
Oh,
he just coasted. Yes,
but you could argue.
I love it with
the
first scene that they showed his armor, his regalia, his hero. Oh, I just love that. Not so much Steve's, but I just loved Mark's.
Really, you didn't like Steve's?
I liked it, but I just liked the way Mark's going on.
Oh,
all of it. I just love that.
What about you, Adan? What was your favorite moment or episode?
Favorite moments this is going to sound stupid.
Oh, I have another favorite moment.
Go ahead.
Remember when they wanted him to turn in, and he couldn't open up his hand. He's trying to open up the fingers.
Oh, in the first episode.
Yeah.
The scarab.
And then he says, "You can have it. And then they pulled him. That was really cool the way they laid that out. Really, because
Yes.
it looked like he was doing it, but you could tell something else was doing it.
Okay, so if I was gonna say favorite moments, the hippopotamus, I
Yeah.
loved her. I loved her character. It's
Her
like he's
voice.
talking
I
through
find
the
her
dead
silly.
to Layla. Oh, it was silly. I love that. She's
Oh, it was
original.
great.
She
She's
sounded
not
like
in
a
the comics.
cartoon character.
Pretty
Yeah.
much. She's not in the comics either. But as far as favorite episode, actually episode 1, that was a hook episode for me. And I love weird, crazy episodes like that. I was a big fan of Legion because of how weird and psychedelic it was.
You did refer to Legion a lot in comparison to this. For me, like the favorite moment was in episode 1, the whole reverting back and forth while he's being chased. That shows you or tells us what he's going through, that he's just bouncing back and forth without realizing he is. What we see is Steve. We don't really see Mark. We see Mark at the end of episode 1 when he changes.
Yeah, in the mirror for the most part. And
Right.
then he changes.
That whole scene where he's running away from the mob, he's being shot out in the cupcake cart, was done very well, because you just see the guy trying to get him, and then his eyes flash, and then there's a dead body behind him or dead body around him. I think that was great, because that's the hook. That's like, okay, this is what to expect from this series. This is what you expect from the character. This is how we're going to explain this. Again, different from the comic, and it's refreshing.
I would say that the acting of Oscar, of the actor, the acting was phenomenal to do both of those characters. The acting was phenomenal.
Yeah, he did great. Everyone in this series did an amazing job acting wise. You have Ethan Hawke, who I think is the first time he ever played a villain.
There's one other project that he's a villain, and that's called Black Phone. So this is like the first time he's a villain on a show that I can think of. And Black Phone is the first time he's a villain in a movie.
That was great. Then you have F. Murray Abraham. He was the voice of Khonshu.
Oh, really?
He's the actor from Mystic Quest.
I did watch it.
You didn't tell me?
I thought I did.
Oh, how could you not tell
I
me?
watched it right after Ted Lasso.
Is it up to par?
It was pretty funny.
Come on, it's right up your alley, bro. It was so up your alley. And I like Layla. She was awesome. She did a great job. She held her own very well.
If you don't like her, that's okay.
I liked her fighting. She was okay at that. I thought she was a little whiny.
Really?
Talk about fighting. Yeah, I don't know how she was whining. Oh, before I was going to say fighting, but there are some connections to the MCU. We mentioned it earlier. One with the comic book of the Darkhold, the one with the 3 Egyptians wearing relic of Aang's character, and also in episode 3, Turkish Delight, which is a connection to Falcon and Winter Soldier. You have Midnight Man. He made an appearance.
Those are Easter eggs.
There's a lot more Easter eggs out there, but also 4, similar to Indiana Jones, to the Mummy.
Oh yeah, that was the end of episode 4 where they do the Indiana Jones cut.
No, not the show, not the Stephen Grant show. I'm talking about when
they're in the temple.
Oh,
right.
Yeah, with the mummy. Gotcha.
And the Mummy and the guard.
Mm-hmm.
That was also a horror episode, if you will, especially with that character, the Mummy character. Until we found out in episode 6, I was thinking they were doing similar to Joker. Like, is this real or is it in his head?
Mm-hmm.
I was having that through the whole time until episode 6 happened. The way they were showing it, the way they were telling it. Even episode 5, maybe right there, I was like, okay, now they're explaining it. But still, is it all in his head that he's sleeping and he's having a dream?
Mm-hmm. Is he really in the doctor's office talking with Arthur Harrow?
Right.
Which
exactly
also is in the comic. The whole thing I was talking about, there was a whole series in the comic where he was in an asylum and he's like, this isn't real. And he's going back and forth and he thinks he escapes and turns out he's in the realm of the gods and it was all in his head. So you're reading like series of comic books to find out it was all in his head after all. And at the end of it, you don't even know if Moon Knight was really a hero in the real world. It's weird. Love it.
I love the fact each personality had their own Moon Knight. We have Mark's version of Moon Knight, which is the original. And then we have Stephen Grant's version,
which is called Mr. Knight.
Mr. Knight, which was in the comic books, he was Moon Knight, but as just strictly as a detective and helping the police, aiding the police like Batman would, where Moon Knight with the cape would be more vengeful and not helping the police.
Okay, think of it this way, for you, Mom. Moon Knight was like Batman. I'm gonna hit the streets. I'm gonna hit criminals. Mr. Knight was more like, I'm Sherlock Holmes. I'm a consultant. I will help people get arrested, but I am the liaison between the police.
When we do see Jake Lockley again in season 2, what is that costume going to be like?
Not going to be as nice as Mark's.
No, but
it could be nicer.
Well, maybe, or maybe it'll be the Space Knight. You're saying. I don't know what that costume is like.
Probably like Conchu, dressing more.
There
like
is a version of Moon Knight where he has the same outfit, but it's more armored, and it's like the bones of Khonshu on top of his.
I think I think it would go more like Khonshu because he's more of Khonshu's conscious. That's why Khonshu probably likes him best. Remember, Khonshu was constantly trying to program. Yeah. Well, not just Steve, but program Mark, and Mark wasn't. Bending.
Well, he said that Jake is more of his fitting. The guy.
Yeah, because he even said that Steven was the imbecile, or he said derogatory things about when Steven.
Let's talk about fighting.
Did you like the fighting, Mom?
Yeah, I like some of the fighting.
Was it entertaining? Was there anything about it that you like? Was there a moment of fighting that caught your attention?
I know I liked that when Steve decided to do some fighting, but that was more like a little comedy piece. They said, "Come on!" He started to do this, and then. That was kind of cute, but I liked it more when Layla's fighting, to me, was more, got more of my attention than the fighting from Steve. And I didn't get to really see the fighting between Moon Knight and the critters that were coming in through the walls and coming. I didn't see him doing any real fighting with anyone. It bothered me at one point. It looks like Moon Knight is going to be losing because he's fighting one of the gods, and it looks like he's losing.
Are you talking about Khonshu?
Khonshu.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll hold that note. Kim, what about you?
I like the fighting between Steven and because it was kind of funny because like Steven, he didn't know how to fight,
right?
Because he's the brains of the bunch. Towards the end, all of a sudden he started fighting. Like, where did he learn that? All of a sudden
he actually says it in episode 5 because Mark is getting overpowered by his people he killed before on the boat, and Steven is like, "Come on, Mark, you can do it. You can do it." And then he's like, "Wait a minute, if you can do it, then I can do it."
Okay.
And so
that's where he gained his confidence,
right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, because that was the problem with Steven. He never had confidence.
And you could also say about the skills is when on episode 6 when he gives Steven the heart after he leaves the field of reeds. The heart, their hands are like this, and the heart disappears between the two of them.
They become one.
That was a giveaway right there too, because it basically solidified for me. This is the one person, 2 personalities in one person.
Exactly. And he said, I learned a new set of skills. It's basically he's adopting his skills from Mark.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So they reunited in heart consciousness.
Now, the one thing that I didn't like was the fighting between Khonshu and what was the other god that they?
Amit.
Yeah, I thought that was a little like King Kong and
Godzilla.
Yeah,
well, but I liked it because it did parallel. Because when he was getting weaker, so was Mark, and
yeah. But why did it have to be like so? Like they were like big.
They're gods. They could be any shape, and no one could see them. Only people who are linked to them.
They're avatars.
I also had a question in the sense of like, why are the gods like animals? Like, the hippo.
That's Egyptian.
The Egyptian thing.
It's an Egyptian thing. Well, many times they didn't have explanations of how things came to be, but so they use things a lot of times. I'm guessing what they couldn't understand as a reason to help them understand. So they put, like there's some people who worship cows, or some people who worship lions, there, bears, of that nature.
Oh my!
I liked the choreography in episode 6 when Moon Knight was switching back and forth to the both versions. Granted, on episode 3 when we saw Oscar Isaac fight, it was terrible. So that it was stunt doubles, maybe, or stunt double if he was doing both versions, the stunt double, that is.
That was a great scene for me because not only was he having a new set of skills and he was able to represent, And he was actually arguably fighting better than Moon Knight. Let's be honest. Like he was when Mr. Knight was going in, he was like pop 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 with the double batons, and he hits that bridge. He cleans himself up. He's like, oh, gotta look good. To wrap it up, Angel, you want to give the voting scale?
Ladies, the way we review it or give our reviews is if you liked it, it's worth the watch. Is it worth the money? Meaning, would you own this on Blu-ray, or is it a waste of time? Tim.
It's worth the watch because I didn't know the backstory, and because I didn't read the comics and everything. I was kind of confused in certain areas. The ending I didn't like. The ending was kind of like it was very short and very blunt. Afterwards, I was like, "That's it," and just felt a little unsatisfied. Like I said, it's worth the watch, but I don't think I would spend the money to own it.
Did you watch it only once?
Yeah, because I wasn't with you guys when you were watching.
It was worth the watch, but I wouldn't buy.
Now that
definitely worth the time. If it was one and done, which is not, I still would be okay if I was going to buy it. I would say it's worth a DVD own into the collection.
For me, worth the watch, definitely worth the time. To buy, not yet. In a sense that they do another season, maybe a box set. Even though they have some tie-ins into the other MCU stories or characters, this is a very standalone show.
Agreed.
And that's what makes me like it even more. Because you don't have no Captain America, no Hawkeye showing up, no Wanda, Scarlet Witch flying by.
Or Kingpin.
Right.
Exactly.
It's his own thing. That was also what made it refreshing. Disney and Marvel gave us a new character that I am very familiar with, and their rebirth of the character brought a new appreciation to it.
So
looking forward to season 2.
We all agree it's worth the time at the least.
I would have to watch it again to get to capture some of the things that you articulated tonight. That I was too caught up in some of the other parts, so I would have to watch it again so that I can get more. And sometimes you can watch it again and you catch things that you missed the first time.
I think it helps when you watch it like back to back, instead of like waiting for the next week for the next episode. Because when you watch it back to back, I feel like it would flow a lot better. Because every time when it ended, I always felt like I'm missing something.
True. I can get that.
It's like a puzzle and you're putting it together.
Yeah. In your case, it's because you don't have the background knowledge. So having that binge helps for both of you. The fun thing for me, it was the gap, because I could reach out to Angel and I'd be like, hey, bro, they're referencing this, or they're talking about this. And I was talking about that with coworkers at work. So it was like our workly discussion every week.
The way it was done, you don't have to really know about the character, because they've pretty much reinvented the character with this series.
True.
So for those like Kim and Mom, it's a clean slate.
It was.
They did a great job explaining. They did a great job of catching you. It's like, what's going on here? Why is he flashing out? What's going on? And then you're invested. And then on episode 5, get the reason why Mark and Steven exist.
That was kind of clever that they decided to wait to episode 5, but I would have liked it in episode 3 or 2. Right?
Possibly, but
It was clever that they did it in 5.
Every good story needs a good conflict, and there was several conflicts. Here is conflict among himself, and that had to be straightened out first. In episode 1, we see that Steve is like experiencing different things, and then he finds out, and everything triggers for him a lot more by one thing. Who remembers?
What? Wait, say that again.
What was the question? What was this thing?
Trigger more?
Something triggered him even more than from saying waking up in a different country.
A few moments later.
The fish?
Exactly right.
Oh, yeah.
The fish. Right.
Because he started questioning why things are different, why things changed. There's a time gap. So it was the fish. He realized he missed a date. Well, and the date was a big thing, too.
You can even say the date, because the girl came up to him and said, we're still on for Saturday?
Oh, yeah.
Friday?
Mm-hmm.
And he's like,
oh,
what?
Really? Saturday? She says, oh, stop kidding.
Right. And then at a steakhouse where Steven is a vegetarian.
But who knows? Who knows? It may not have been the mother that caused the personality disorder, since it's in his blueprint that he was going to grow up to be this. We don't know if the gods had a watch on him all this time from before he's even born. We don't know. I bet you they're going to come up with that in number 2.
That's also a potential. Actually,
Yeah. Because he's being
What?
on another level being trained since a kid.
There's also another theory out there that Khonshu was also influencing him as a child because you see the skeleton of the bird in his memory
in the room
when his brother died.
Right, but that's part of my Joker connection.
Yeah,
where he's stepping in, so he's everything is in his head. Right. Maybe he was traumatized on many levels. He's responsible for his brother's death. His mother blames him and beats him for it because he is responsible for his brother's death. Let's be honest here.
But that's what I'm saying to you. His trauma comes as a childhood. And as a child, right, he's now got the post-traumatic syndrome. He becomes vulnerable for all these gods or entities. Say, okay, we'll start grooming him now. Take advantage of a fractured soul.
I mean, these are great theories. You can do that. You can look that the gods saw the future and knew who there was, or that the right time, the right place where the events of his life that occurred helped, and then him falling and being in the desert and being backstabbed or double crossed by
Bushmaster.
We got to look for the synchronicities. You see, he could have used dirt around his bed and he didn't. He used sand. An angel said that the sand was to mark whenever he stepped out that he would see the footprints. But sometimes, depending on how so that sand connected me.
But
to
also the
Egypt.
sand represented Egypt,
exactly,
desert too,
and grounding.
That's true, but you have the grounding of the ankle lock. You have the grounding in the sense of the doors are already taped. I think Jake showed up a lot of times.
We just don't know it or see.
It's not so obvious. It's very easy to take the ankle lock off. It's very easy to step over the sand. It's very easy to take off the tape and put it back on. There are times when on the Rubik's Cube that he's playing with, it's solved. It wasn't by Steven.
But Steven is the whiz.
Right, but some people, you don't have to be so smart to understand to solve the Rubik's Cube. There's other, there's a pattern to it.
Well, I have another question is, what happened to Layla at the end?
Oh, I hope she probably gets married or something and decides not to come back again.
She's already married.
It's like she was.
Well, she gets divorced and gets married to somebody else.
She ended up being an avatar, right? And she fought.
Well,
wait, I'm going to Kim. Kim, didn't you find it silly when she's in the hallway and there goes the hippo goddess trying to convince her? Oh, no. It's Khonshu's trying to convince her. Just, no, I don't want. And I already know she's going to. She's going to be an avatar. I already knew it. I said, why did they waste that scene?
She didn't want to be Khonshu's avatar.
Exactly.
But she's seen what's happened with Mark.
Right.
She didn't want it to end up as Mark.
Right.
She didn't want to end up like.
And then the hippo was last straw that she had to, in order to survive, in order to make it out alive, she had to succumb.
Well, Khonshu even told her that was to have more avatars. She knew that since Khonshu said that she would have to become an avatar.
Anything else, guys? Because we're way over time.
Yeah,
I'm good.
We're good.
For bed.
We're good. Heel and seal.
All right, guys. Thank you so much for joining us for another marvelous review of Moon Knight. Until next time, will be the next time. I'm Angel.
I'm Don.
I'm Mom.
This is Mom, and this is Kim. Love you guys.
Two tails.
Love you.
Love you too.
Love you, Mom.
Love you too.